We all back on the Zion train? I think we might be back on the Zion train after he drops his first career triple-double in a win against the Phoenix Suns. I'll break down why he was so effective in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans and what it means going forward. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Friday, and oh boy, Zion Williamson, first career triple-double. We'll break down what made him look so good against the Phoenix Suns. I want to look at the other big men, Karlo, Matkovic, and Yves, Missi, playing really well and growing as they've gone and played more this season. Then we'll look at the defense in this game because a little iffy at times, but overall pretty good, and that's really important for this team. So, of course, thank you for making it Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We are the number one Pelicans podcast here. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below, because this was a fun game. One, look, it was offensive, particularly in the first half. Pelicans winning 124-116 over the Phoenix Suns, where Zion Williamson has his first career triple-double. I told you in yesterday's show, he's playing the best basketball of his career. Limited minutes. He played more minutes in this one and just was unleashed in this game. The numbers, the stats, truthfully don't do it all justice. 27 points on 13 of 17 shooting. That is 76.5%. 10 rebounds, 11 assists, 2 blocks, and just 2 turnovers. And he wasn't even good from the free throw line. He was 1 of 4. But he was absolutely phenomenal in this game, and it opened everything up for New Orleans. So he was a little quiet when it came to scoring to start this game, but was dishing out assists. Within the first 6 minutes of this game, he had 4 assists. You see how he draws in double teams, and that creates space for other guys. And then that spacing, or that shooting from the space for other guys, created a little bit more space for Zion. Trey Murphy was an absolute flamethrower early on in this game. In the first quarter, he was outstanding. He finished with 18 points on 5 of 13 from 3, but he started 4 of 6 from 3. That all of a sudden made him a threat out there on the court, which gave Zion a little bit of breathing room. In the third quarter, you saw McCollum get it going. His shot starting to fall a little bit more than it was earlier. That got some more space from Zion Williamson, and it put Phoenix in a position where it's a pick your poison. This is the idealized version of what we've wanted to see. This is why you need a stretch big or something along those lines. And we'll get into the other big men in this game because Karlo was making his threes, 3 of 7. You know, he's standing in the corner knowing that he's going to get those shots. He's been practicing them, and he converted them in this game. So all of a sudden, now the Phoenix Suns are in a position where it's pick your poison. You want to guard Zion? Okay, guard Zion, but you're going to leave an open shooter. You want to cover the shooters? You're going to let Zion play one-on-one or even one-on-2? He'll be able to score around that sort of thing. And he did incredibly well in this game. This is one of those ones where he just looked completely in command, and he looked so unbelievably dominant that, going back to what we talked about in yesterday's show, when he's playing like this, and he's on a stretch right now where it's easily the best basketball of his career, particularly when you factor in the defense, which we'll get to in a little bit later in the show. You know, he looks like he could be the number one guy on a championship team or a contending team. Him, Trey, whatever top draft pick they get, that's your kind of core going forward. You have other pieces that work. Karlo, Missi, Murray, CJ, those can come and go, but the core effective pieces, Herb Jones is in there too, is Zion, Trey, and whoever they draft this year, it feels like. And that seems to be pretty good here. Zion was a plus 17 in this game, leading the starters. The starters weren't the most effective, but Zion was, and we talked about his impact. And if you haven't listened to that show, the Everydayers know the numbers, go listen to Thursday's episode of Locked On Pelicans where we're breaking down just his on-off impact on this team. Games like this are why it's just so hard to give up on Zion Williamson. And you've heard me kind of be wishy-washy about it a little bit more so than I ever have before. I've long said I would go down with the Zion ship. And then that injury to Murray happened, and he won't be ready for the first month or two to start the season, and that is a big concern. But all of a sudden, you start looking at him, Zion, now and go, yeah, like everything else doesn't matter when your best player is playing like this. And he is. And it's, oh yeah, Zion's back. We're back on the Zion train because he is that good. And when he's defending at the level that he's been defending at recently, that's even more encouraging when it comes to it. He was guarding Kevin Durant. He was switching on to guards, doing everything you needed from him on that side of the ball that we really haven't seen from him in years past. When Zion can go out and put up a 27-point triple-double, shooting basically 77% from the field, you still have to build around that guy, right? This is what the Pelicans' plan is. They're not going to just trade him this offseason. I think they're going to try and go forward and continue to build around him. If they trade him, it means that David Griffin is very, very safe in his job because you wouldn't just trade someone like that away without ownership signing off on a long-term vision here. But Zion, finally getting above 30 minutes, by the way, did all of this in 31 minutes, which is the most minutes he's played in a little while here. He has looked that good this season. And if Zion, this is the version you're getting of Zion, the efficient version of Zion that is playing defense, that changes the direction of your franchise. More so than anything else, Zion playing like this changes the direction of your franchise and puts you in a much better position than you were before. We talked about Josh Lloyd, who I love from Locked On Fantasy Basketball, being like, what is the Pelican strategy? It's this. It's make it work around Zion Williamson in some capacity. And in this game against the Phoenix Suns, who admittedly are probably, you could call them a dumpster fire. They're in like some awful, awful spiral, having a couple of awful losses recently, including this one, frankly. We'll see how they play on Friday night. And I'm going to be really curious about that one too. But all of a sudden, this team, the Phoenix Suns, look garbage. Makes the Pelicans look a little bit better. Only 6 turnovers for New Orleans in this one. They basically won this one in like every way you wanted them to do it. They outscored them 58-34 in points in the paint, 25-19 in terms of second chance points, and then 21-14 in fast break points. Basically every category where you want to be better than your opponent that helps the Pelicans win, you saw it in this game. Kind of they're like KPIs, key performance indicators here. Sounding corporate all of a sudden. You see how well this team is playing when they do those things. When they get into the paint and score, it means Zion's getting down low. And they didn't even get fouled a ton in this game, only going to the line 12 times. Per 36 minutes, Zion is going to the line over 10 times per game right now. He went just 4 times in this one. The whistle was being swallowed here, and there wasn't a ton of contact around Zion because the Phoenix Suns defense is that bad. Just letting him kind of waltz on into the paint, doing whatever he wanted. But you saw him in command of this one. There was an assist to Trey Murphy early on in the game where Zion drove and started to get double teamed, pulled up, realized that, and then just kicked it out to Trey for a deep 3, but Trey was wide open. And more importantly, Trey was ready. He was ready to catch and shoot that and launch the 3, knowing how defenses are reacting to Zion Williamson. I like that. You're seeing the chemistry get built out here on the court. And look, they're on a 3-game winning streak right now. Again, against baddish teams, against the Spurs and the Phoenix Suns. No Bradley Beal in this one. That could have changed the makeup of this game. But, there's something to be said of, you're free to play how they want to play now because you are missing, and had been for a while anyway, so I don't know exactly how much it factors into it, Brandon Ingram. And that's not a knock on Brandon Ingram. He's a good player. Did he fit with Zion and the way this team wants to play? Probably not. And you're starting to just see an idealized version of the Pelicans here. So let me know what you thought about Zion Williamson in this game, because I thought he looked great. You back on board the Zion trade? If you were off, do you still think you should trade him, maybe while his value's at an all-time high? Let me know in the comments down below. So coming up next, I want to look at Karlo, Matkovic, and Yves Missi because they both played exceptionally well in this game for different ways, but also similar. Let's break down what we saw from them because that's a game changer going forward because they both started tonight. Let's look at that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to bet on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love the live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether you're backing your team for a late comeback or a player to hit a clutch three like CJ did in this one, like Trey did in this one, you're never going to miss your chance. You could have taken, by the way, the Pelicans +5 in this one. You would have won, especially if you combined it with over on Zion's points. And the app is super easy to use. So right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And thank you for making it Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everyday. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. If you're an everyday, this big game from Zion's no real surprise, right? He's been playing that good. We've been covering it all here on Locked On Pelicans, just giving you the insight you want. And now, go check out the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter over at LockedOnDaily.com. Just scroll down till you see the Locked On Pelicans logo. Click on it. It's one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. All right, let's keep talking about this win over the Phoenix Suns. I'm laughing because I'm on NBA's game night tonight. So Locked On NBA should be your second listen today. And the Phoenix Suns, we play sometimes I'll do those minute clips after games and, upload them on like YouTube Shorts. We all do that, all the hosts on Locked On. And then we kind of combine them into one show where we talk about the biggest games. I'll be on Locked On NBA game night on Fridays, and we're going to talk a lot about Zion Williamson, national media coverage driven by me for Locked On, for the Pels here. And also, I got to get the clips from our other hosts, and our Locked On Suns host, Benjamin Garcia, just texted me here, and he goes, "I still hate everything." And it's the video talking about the Suns losing this game. He texted me last week because we were on there too. And he goes, "I hate everything as well." And he said, "Go ahead and copy and paste that for the next game that you cover too, because that will also be the case." That's how bad the things are for the Phoenix Suns right now. But go check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Make that your second listen today. So let's look at the other bigs here for the Pelicans, or at least the bigs that played significant minutes. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl got some run off the bench with Kelly Olynyk not playing in this one. No Bruce Brown either, as they're kind of coming back from like return to play conditioning. They were trying to rule some folks out and see if maybe they could lose here. Didn't end up happening. But I thought Karlo, Matkovic, and Yves, Missi, both starting in this one, played exceptionally well. The only two starters that were a positive in plus-minus in this game were Karlo and Zion. Zion was a +17. Karlo was a +4, but I thought Missi also played particularly well. So let's start with him. He feasted at the rim, whether it was on lobs or whether it was on a simple action that you saw them run repeatedly here. We talked about spacing in terms of three-point shooting for Zion Williamson, but there's also something called vertical spacing that is a factor here, and that is something that Yves Missi often provides, and that's you're an above-the-rim threat. So if he's in the dunker spot, which is basically immediately to the left or right of the basket, basically you get the ball and then you just dunk, which he did a ton of in this game. That's called the dunker spot, so that when you get the ball, you just go up and you dunk with it. But if you're right there and you have someone that can lob the ball up to that guy in the dunker spot, it does pin a defender to that guy, because if the defender takes a step away, they're out of position to defend that lob or to contest a rebound on a missed shot. And that dunker spot player can just easily score or clean up a miss. And you saw a lot of that here, and Missi provides it. But one thing that can happen with someone just standing only in the dunker spot and not moving is it can screw up your spacing. When Zion drives and there's another big down low guarding Missi, they can kind of get in between the two guys, the dunker spot man and Zion a little bit here, and try and kind of hedge and play both at once, and it can often work. Sometimes you just need some extra arms in front of Zion, and that's it. It doesn't need to be a full body. Bigs with longer arms can do some of that here. So what you saw the Pelicans do, and you've seen this repeatedly over the season now, and it's become more and more and more as the years gone on and Missi has developed and grown, and you've seen that from him, is he'll often start in the corner or halfway from the dunker spot to the short corner and kind of stay there. He's out of the way enough that he's forcing the defender to commit to either guarding him or going and double teaming Zion. What do you think the defender does? He goes and double teams Zion when Zion drives. And once he goes and double teams Zion, that's when Missi cuts. He just goes right to the basket. Basically runs right to the dunker spot. And now the defender that was on Missi is out of position guarding Zion. And all Zion has to do is just get the ball to Missi on a dump off pass or something like that. And Missi goes up and dunks it. Hence him being in the dunker spot. You saw them do this repeatedly in this game. You've seen this a lot recently too. Missi is starting to figure out the chemistry with Zion. Zion's understanding the type of passes he needs to do to get the ball to Missi. And Missi's got that timing down on the cut of knowing when he needs to start going. You go too early, you muck up spacing. You don't go at all, you don't provide that outlet. He knows when he needs to cut, where he's going to be open to get the ball. And you saw this repeatedly. This isn't hard, right? Like sometimes basketball is not a hard game. You just got to cut when you need to cut and trust that Zion will get you the ball. And you saw that happen with Missi in this game a ton. That's him becoming a threat on the offensive end. He finished with 11 points, 10 rebounds in this one, and was really, really good. He was getting fouled, going to the line too, which is what you want to see as well. He was effective. The plus minus doesn't always paint the whole picture here, but I liked what we saw from Missi in this game, and I liked just the simple action of, okay, we have a non-shooting big out there with Zion. How do we maximize that? How do we make that work in the best way possible? And they're starting to figure that out with Missi. Now, Karlo Matkovic, on the other hand, provides something completely different, and that's more shooting and more spacing, and you saw it in this game. Karlo finished with 17 points, 10 rebounds. It's a really good stat line for a rookie, starting at the power forward spot, in kind of the jumbo lineup. He gave you 7 defensive boards, which is something that they need. Missi gave you 5. Zion gave you 6. So your front court there is giving you about, what is that, 18 defensive rebounds? That's a very good number. You need that from this group of guys here. But Karlo's also stretching the court. If he couldn't make his threes or wasn't making his threes, there would be a problem here. He was 3 of 7 from deep in this one. That's 43%. That'll work. You need shooting and spacing around Zion Williamson. And with CJ, there's spacing. Trey provides spacing. Karlo now is providing spacing. So 3 of your 5 guys are shooters, let's call them, or kind of shooters. Missi is providing vertical spacing and doing other things that work within offense. So it's not a huge shock that they looked as good as they did in this game, is it? They just went out and played simple, smart basketball. Nothing was complex. There wasn't like a brand new game plan or anything like that for the Phoenix Suns here, for the Pelicans trying to execute. They just went out and they outworked them, just played smart basketball, and it led to a bunch of good things. Basically, it was just as simple as that. Sometimes this game is not hard, right? Hard to do it, but in concept and in theory, not too difficult. Pelicans just went out with a good lineup that made their shots. Pelicans shot 17 of 47, almost 53s in this game. 36.2%. That'll work. 17 made threes here. And you needed that because the Phoenix Suns shot 20 of 53. Those numbers are really good when Zion is playing as efficiently as he did, and you see what the shooting provides. This is why they wanted Brandon Ingram to take more threes. You can see the offense kind of come into play of what they wanted it to look like, what you would have envisioned it would have looked like. And it's unfortunate we're seeing it so late and against, a bad defensive team. The Phoenix Suns stink on defense. Let me reiterate that. They stink on defense. But it was nice to see the theory of the Pelicans come to fruition behind, an MVP kind of game from Zion Williamson. So a lot of fun in this one, and I like seeing the growth of the big men here. Karlo Matkovic, Yves Missi. Karlo will probably get dropped for Kelly Olynyk, but you've in the starting lineup. But you would imagine Karlo is going to be earning more and more minutes as the continues to go on. I don't know if he can play many more than almost 36, but he's been playing exceptionally well. He's a rookie this year. Needed to kind of really get in there, get some run, figure some things out, and he is. You're seeing him play pretty good defense too. love it. Just love it. This was a really fun game. I really enjoyed watching this one. Even though it hurts the tank and the top draft pick, sometimes you've got to get these games to kind of remind yourself, the team, the fans, everybody, of how good the team could be and what the direction kind of is going forward. So coming up next, let's look at the defense here, because I found that pretty interesting with what they were doing, and it seemed to really work in this game. Let's break that down coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast for a reason. Go listen to Locked On NBA Game Night, recapping every single game across the association this season. Don't forget about Locked On Saints. Saints had an interview with Cam Ward, new QB. Ross Jackson, host of Locked On Saints, making sense of everything black and gold. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make them your second listen today. All right, let's start to wrap up talking about the Pelicans win over the Phoenix Suns, 124-116. Zion's first career triple-double. Let me know in the comments down below. You back on board with Zion Williamson? Yes or no? In this game, you also saw some really good defense, and I thought this was particularly important here. The Pelicans, as we kind of talked about a little bit in yesterday's show and other shows recently, the defense has been bad this season, and they need that to be better. This is a team that does need defense to really be the most effective version of themselves, because when you get stops, you can get out in transition and run. And the Pelicans did a really good job of that in this game. Phoenix Suns had just 10 turnovers. I wouldn't call that a lot, right? Pelicans turned that into 21 fast break points. They got out and they ran against the Phoenix Suns. They even ran off misses. So defense forces a miss. You get the defensive rebound, and then you get out and then you run against them. That's what they did in this game, and I very much, again, enjoyed it. When you see those dunks in transition, when you see lobs in transition, that's after you get a defensive stop, force a turnover here, and get out and run. And that's what the Pelicans did very much in this game. And they primarily did it off rebound. So you force a miss, you secure that rebound, and you go. Basically on 40, I have the stats, by the way, for this. On 41.2% of every defensive board that the Pelicans got, they ran against Phoenix. So they had, we can do some of the math here, right? We said it was 42.1. What does that basically work out to? The Pelicans had 34 defensive rebounds times 0.42.1, 421. They basically got out and ran on 14, 15 defensive boards is what that number works out to be. Compared to the Phoenix Suns, who ran on about a quarter of the Pelicans' misses. To get closer to 50% than not 50% is a pretty impressive mark here for New Orleans. That basically added tons of offense for this team. All of a sudden, they were sprinting in transition opportunities against, in a fast break situation where you're man up on offense, making the right reads, making the right passes, and scoring. Normally we think of that off of like a steal, something like that. And the Pelicans did a good job of that, of running off of steals. About 2/3 of every, the steals they ran against them. So about 6 of those or so, compared to, with the 10, it was probably 6, 7 of the 10 that the Phoenix Suns had. But to do it against defensive boards means you are playing fast, and it means you're securing those rebounds and doing a really good job of it. And so that was a very encouraging thing to see from this team. This 3 big lineup, basically Zion at the 3 and running a 4, running a 5 out there, and being able to get more rebounds compared to where they were earlier in the year when they were real bad, like historically bad in terms of defensive rebounding. Are they still last in the league? They still are. But they still did a good enough job in this game, and that was something that they really, really needed to do. They didn't do the best job on the defensive glass, still giving up more second chance opportunities, more offensive boards than you'd like, but they're starting to actually limit that number a little bit, and they're making the most of when they do get defensive boards too. If Zion doesn't need to secure the defensive board, he can get out in transition and start to run, and you just got to pass the ball up to him, right? You saw that from guys like Jose Alvarado, who was really good getting steals in transition in this game, right? You saw he had 3 in this one. You saw this team doing a really good job of trying to push the pace and just basically be the best version of themselves. Like, this is the team we thought we were going to see all year long. Force steals, grab boards, get out, bolt, run, score in transition, and don't worry about the half court as much. But the half court will also work if you're getting that kind of efficiency from Zion and the offense being as good as it was because of the spacing and everything. So you liked what you saw from them in transition in this game, in the half court too. It was basically just like a complete game for New Orleans in a way that we really haven't seen a whole lot often from them. But the defense really had a big part of it too, of forcing those misses. Zion Williamson, by the way, started the game defending Kevin Durant. Think about that one for a second. I love that. That he was out there trying to push hard and trying to get this win and doing everything he could and taking on the toughest defensive assignment that you could have out there. I'll be curious to look at the numbers. It doesn't usually update till the next day, so we'll talk about these early next week, and I might do a bonus show over the weekend where we look at the defensive stats from this game. Kevin Durant had 28 points. Devin Booker had 36. Those guys are going to get theirs, but you limited basically everybody else, and no one else really burned you and killed you. No one else got above 15 points for the Phoenix Suns. Good team defense. The most important thing was grabbing those misses, right? And limiting the second chance points. The Phoenix Suns had 14 defensive boards that had only 19 second chance points. You'd like that to be a little bit lower, of course. But overall, New Orleans did a good job, and that 3 big lineup is working, and it is helping their defense because defensive rebounding is defense. I think sometimes that gets forgotten about. You think about a guy locking someone down, getting a steal. No, just simply like getting defensive rebounds it counts as defense because you're ending those possessions, and the Pelicans did a really good job of that in this game. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. We'll be back with you all next week. Talk about the game tonight against the Phoenix Suns. What adjustments did we see? More on tanking, more on the draft, more on Zion. There's a whole lot here we got to cover. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. I'll be back with you all next time.